My name is Sean McGrath, founder of WideAwakeNews.com, host on the Rinse Radio Network, and co-founder of Doomcast. We are being led like lemmings to slaughter, right? Over and over and over again, and it's beyond frustrating for me to continue to make these commentary videos, watching the degradation of truth, right? The establishment of the lie, the big lie that's leading us closer and closer to an escalation of World War III. Because be rest assured of this, we're already in World War III. We're fighting everywhere around this globe. Our men, our women are facing danger in just about every country on this planet because of a narrative that is a lie, the complete and utter lie. We're being told one thing, but reality bears out something totally different. We are serving the masters, these corporate special interest masters, to the point that we now don't even consider the acts of barbarism that happen in our name as being anything other than standard everyday practice. It's been happening in North Africa, it's been happening in the Middle East for over a decade, and it's been happening in our name, and it's been a time that this nation, unfortunately, I believe, will never heal from. Being conned into being the policeman of the world, killing for the name of so-called democracy, when in reality, all we install is a dysfunctional, bastardized government that is controlled from on high, namely Washington, D.C. The latest is Ukraine. You know, we had an accord reached at Geneva. A statement was given. I actually went on RT to talk about this statement, and I said then that it's meaningless. It's absolutely meaningless. The players involved, both of them, came before the cameras and they said what they needed to say in order to look like that they were the bigger man. They were the bigger country saying the right thing. But in reality, this crisis was going to continue to escalate and continue to escalate. It most certainly is. Gennady Kernes. He's the mayor of the second largest city in Ukraine. Now, keep in mind, his city, right? It is being run. It is that part of Ukraine is being run by the U.S.-led coup d'état government that was imposed, installed. Namely, a lot of these actors are from the far right, or I call them the far right, the right sector, a fascist group that has been given the keys to the car because they were a handy ally in when it came to overthrowing the elected government of Ukraine. We implement this crony government, and what do we have? We have chaos, we have anarchy, we have people being shot in the back, the mayor of this city being shot in the back, and we have an establishment media in this country and in the West, the U.S. and in the EU, who are saying, well, these hit orders are coming out of the Kremlin, they're coming out of Russia, right? And I'm not an apologist for Russia. I'm not an apologist for their system of government or anything that they're trying to accomplish over there. But I am a seeker of the truth, and basic common sense tells us that this is yet another lie being brought to you so that you will be pliable. You'll be malleable when it comes to boots on the ground. Oh, that could never happen, Charlie. Boots on the ground. You better think again, right? The day after the Geneva Accord, this letter that promises peace and an end to the violence, the day after it was released, the Polish defense minister came out bragging about how the U.S. was going to send troops into Poland. And guess what? They're there. Airborne troops are on the ground in Poland. You know, he goes on to say that NATO needs a new function. This new function is going to be not the war on terror, but what appears to be a reemergence of the Cold War, which definitely, in my opinion, could turn into a hot war very quickly. So let's take a look at this mayor who got shot in the back in a city that is controlled by Ukraine, a government that has been, imposed by a U.S.-led coalition of the deposition of the elected government. Shot in the back. Now, the Western media, our media, is telling us that it's planned by the Kremlin. They're given these marching orders to kill, right? But when you look at the facts behind this guy, you see something completely different. Yanukovych, the elected president of Ukraine, who stepped down and fled to Russia before he was killed, he was a strong supporter of Yanukovych. Not only was he a strong supporter of Yanukovych, he was a firm opponent of the current regime. And he was an opponent of what the West is trying to accomplish inside Ukraine, which is namely put the IMF and technocrats in control of the country and immerse them into the EU and get a little bit closer to the doorstep of Russia. He was opposed to all this. Not only that, he was a multi-billionaire. He was Jewish. So the folks that are in charge inside Ukraine right now, the right sector, who are known to be neo-Nazi fascists, who absolutely despise. We've already heard talks coming out about registering Jews inside of Ukraine. You know, they had, if you look at the picture in its totality, he had every reason to be supported by Russia and every reason to be assassinated by the West. Yet it's no problem. We're going to spin a story that these plans are coming out of the Kremlin and that he was on a hit list of powerful leaders that might be in opposition to the Kremlin. Well, the facts bear out something different. He's completely not in opposition to Russia. He supported Russia from the get-go, and now he's caught some bullets in the back for his trouble. Look, what you see going on in Ukraine is a massively huge deal, right? It's a huge deal that we need to be paying attention to because every right wing and left wing pundit in the United States is telling you that we need to have hostility generated towards Russia for this for their action inside Crimea. Yet in Crimea, they actually had a referendum. They voted on if they wanted to join Russia or not. 90+% of the folks came out. 80+% said yes, they wanted to rejoin Russia. Was it fair? Was there corruption? I don't know, but I can tell you there was a referendum. Inside of Ukraine, in the so-called free zone that is Western backed, there's no referendum. There's no chance to vote. In fact, it's just the opposite. There is no debate. There is no room for opposition voice. You have a bunch of thugs running around that are there for, how did they get there? How did these thugs, these neo-Nazis, these criminals, how did they get into the position of power? Well, you don't have to look very far, and you don't have to listen to me. You can look at a report or a story from Dennis Kucinich who spells out exactly how these people came into power. 60 plus programs by government agencies, quasi-government agencies of the United States, and $5+ billion spent in order to get Yanukovych out of power. That's exactly what we have happened. The area has fallen into total chaos at this point. Russia, seeing the IMF wanting to swoop in and take technocratic control over Ukraine, and more importantly, I'm assuming for Russia, seeing NATO trying to move in a doorstep closer to them, did what exactly the same thing any other nation would do that has military bases inside of a country. They would go in and try to protect their bases or claim some land. So now you have a standoff inside Ukraine. Russia versus the West. You have propagandists in the media that are the bidding of Washington, D.C., saying anything that is put before them in front by the CIA or some other intelligence agency, put before them to read in order to generate hostility in you so that you will be all right with your child, right, in the future, in the near future. Your child, your neighbor, your husband, your wife facing one of these, right? We face too many of these around this planet over the last decade. We face too many of these for a faulty lie, for a cause that wasn't not only just, it wasn't truthful in nature. We're being led down a path to slaughter as if we're a bunch of lemmings. And what is the end goal? The end goal can be really easily surmised. The absolute total enslavement of every single person that considers themselves free right now. You might think that sounds grandiose, right? You might think that sounds like it's over the top. But look at the reality on the ground. Look at where we're at on this planet, right? You have 500 million people in Europe that are slaves right now to Brussels. They're slaves to this economic union. They're at the behest of a bunch of bankers who got paid off in order to fix a debt that they created in the first place, to order to fix a disaster that they created in the first place. And every time we see a nation throughout Europe go into this crisis mode where you have a Western-led coup d'etat or a Western-led destabilization, followed by economic collapse, followed by IMF and other bankers offering a loan in order to pay back money that they're owed, that they created, the debt that they created in the first place, and the crisis they created in the second place, we see a people that end up broken, and end up indebted and end up enslaved by these same bankers. You don't believe me? Look at Greece right now. Their economy has been cut by 25% because of the IMF and their solution. The unemployment rate inside of Greece is 28%. That's the official rule, the official number that's been given. And just like here, the statistics are skewed to the low side. Look at what's going on throughout the periphery of Europe. It is an absolute end to sovereignty. It's an evaporation of borders throughout Europe. It's the power being given to one governing economic body. And they're not going to stop unless we stop them. And we stop them by demanding the end of hostility from the use of our blood and our treasure in order to facilitate the will of a bunch of bankers. If we don't stop this, it will continue to spread throughout Europe, and it will continue to point us closer towards the ultimate goal, which is a global economic collapse, partially brought to fruition by things like advancing sanctions against Russia, who absolutely controls the keys to the kingdom when it comes to energy solutions inside of Europe. We are heading towards the uber economic collapse that will put into power the final piece that these technocrats need in order to implement their agenda, which is total global financial governance. And you will be the one who ends up being the slave to these technocrats. Stories are attached. That's all I got.